Alexandra Davids, Waikura, Linwood-Central-Heathcote Community Board to come forward. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I know. There's no one here. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here this morning on behalf of the board. We really appreciate the opportunity of being able to present today. This submission deals with matters important to the community board, in particular to issues raised in the community board plan and which the board has been working hard towards achieving over this term, and in some cases finalising projects from the previous term. As you're all aware, the Waikura Linwood-Central-Heathcote Community Board will be disbanded in the upcoming elections, so the matters we are speaking to today are ones which we are looking to enable some continuity for our affected communities. I would like to start by acknowledging the lack of us adding the Bromley odour issue into our written submission. It is clearly a glaring omission, but not in our board plan. This is obviously something you are all well aware of, but it would be remiss of me not to bring it up again for our affected communities. As a board, we obviously support a speedy remediation to the issues in the area, including the organics processing plant and the wastewater treatment plant. Odour is such a convenient word to use, and I would like to acknowledge the word stench being used at last week's meeting as far more appropriate. Whilst no one should have to put up with this, I am thankful that it has been travelling to other parts of the city, as I know this will bring a greater urgency to the issue, as it is something that needs to be remediated now. This is a Christchurch-wide issue and not a local Bromley one. We would also like to acknowledge the report going to Council on the 5th of May, recommending the removal of stop banks on the lower Apawaho-Heathcote River from the budget for the Land Drainage Recovery Program. The board has asked for follow-ups on this and would like to note there has been no briefing to the community board before the meeting. We have understandably had many concerned residents contact us leading into the Thursday meeting, but have not actually had the information to follow these concerns up in an appropriate manner. The board understands the importance of our community organisations and the massive positive impacts and reach they have within our communities that we as a council, try as we might, simply cannot have. We of course support the council's commitment to the Strengthening Communities funding, and we would like to acknowledge the important work our community organisations are doing and say a huge thank you to both them and of course the council for helping allow their work to continue for stronger communities in Ōtautahi. On to the Lynwood Ward. So Bromley residents have been dealing with the impacts of the increase of light industry in the area, which has led to an increase in heavy transport and buses using the once quiet suburban streets. This has in turn led to significant degradation not only to the amenity of the area but also the well-being of residents, and we thank the council for supporting the work around improving the roads in Bromley by adding funds in this annual plan, and remind you of the significant positive impact you, along with the staff, will make on so many people's daily lives in this area that has felt forgotten for so long. Linwood Park Temporary Village, this was a temporary earthquake measure, and we strongly support this work happening in the 2022-23 years with no further delays. The Apawaho-Heathcote Guidance Plan. This board initiative is close to completion. The board expects to receive the plan in June and bring it to council in July for endorsement. This is a legacy project from the Linwood-Central-Heathcote Community Board, and whilst it has no immediate budget implications, we are asking for your wholehearted support of this project. On to Radley Street. Like Bromley, Woolston also suffers the effects of heavy vehicles and speed on residential streets, and these are both areas where there are lots of families and children. The board has started in Bromley, and we can see there will likely be flow-on effects for Woolston, but we support temporary measures to mitigate the speed and heavy transport effects on Radley Street. On to the Heathcote Ward. So the Apawa Village pedestrian crossing, the board wishes to say thank you for adding this project to the traffic safety program. On to the Edward Mouldy track. This used to be a popular walking track prior to the earthquakes, but more importantly, it has been a tsunami evacuation track. The board would urge the council to reinstate the track, both for the health and well-being of those that choose to use it, and also for the safety of those in the area, with the inevitability those tsunami sirens will go off for something other than just a test. Stormwater drainage in the Port Hills is a worsening issue. Stormwater collection systems are failing to collect and retain all stormwater due to leftover earthquake damage and more frequent heavy rain events. This is causing water to gush out over streets and into people's properties, flooding them. We would request a review to be undertaken of the stormwater drainage and to develop an updated strategy for renewal and repair. The Sumner Bays, as we all know, is a citywide destination. Whenever the sun is shining, the causeway is full of cars, and we need to ensure it remains well maintained for not only the enjoyment, but most importantly, the safety of all. The Beachville Road Esplanade is an example of a well-used area that has not been well maintained. It is directly adjacent to the coastal pathway and is an eyesore and not fully usable active space. Residents and many visitors alike would benefit from this area being reseeded, an irrigation system put in for maintenance, and bollards to protect the area from vehicles that now, due to its lack of maintenance, use it to park upon. The Sumner Esplanade seating is another example of an asset that could be extremely well used by residents from the whole of Christchurch and tourists. However, sitting on a shard of wood or a snapped-off pole is unappealing to most, to say the least. We are also bringing up Mariner Street and would like to ensure the work planned for the years 22 and 23 is not delayed, as the issues with the condition are ongoing and a hindrance to all using or attempting to use it. On to the Central Ward. So the Central Ward is the heart of our city and a destination for all, whether that be to live, work, play, shop, be entertained or relax. As a board, we have prioritised footpaths and pedestrian ways being improved and fit for use, especially in the inner city, and would like to emphasise they are not add-ons to roads or cycleways. We need to remember that the city is very much a walking destination and that we need to be catering for the health and well-being and always thinking of our less mobile citizens. I have also come to the council in recent months discussing worn-off streets, such as Dawson Street, as you remember. The board advocate that greater consideration needs to be given to how these access ways in the central city are used, rather than just looking at the cost. On to Phillipstown. We would like to emphasise the importance of a third space in Phillipstown. A third space is a place where extended families and the community can meet, celebrate, and use shared green space. This is even more important in Phillipstown, which is an area where there is an enormous amount of development, rental accommodation, and a high percentage of new migrant families who like to settle in close proximity to each other in the area. The board strongly support the addition of funding for the Phillipstown Hub and thank them for their ongoing mahi. The greening of the East project is dear to the hearts of many, especially as it was initiated by Sally Buck. She has allowed the project to get up and running, and as a board, we appreciate the commitment to this project, which will address much needed tree canopy in this area. We fully support the funding bid for the project of both capital and operational expenditure. And the electric bus. We all know that it was a success back in the day. I'm sure you are all aware I have come to council advocating on behalf of not only the board, but also strongly for residents in the area, and of course those travelling into the city centre. This is a no-brainer when it comes to bringing life back to the city, with ease of access whilst being environmentally sustainable. We support the council for your joint efforts with ECAN to bring this project to fruition for the whole of the city to benefit from. The Waikura Linwood-Central-Heathcote Community Board would like to recognise our communities who have taken the time to submit to this annual plan this year. For these communities, this year's submissions are important for continuity moving into their new community board for 2023. The Linwood-Central-Heathcote Community Board has consistently advocated for funding for community board plan projects throughout this term, and we're proud to say that we have progressed on all of those projects, some to completion, others to a good state to hand over to our new boards, and we thank you all for your support in helping us get there.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you, Alexandra, for your leadership and stepping up when Sally passed away, and we really respect the fact that you've played such a significant role. So thank you for your final presentation to us at an annual plan hearings. Can you put that image back? Because I was just going to start on the image of that bus, and I look at that bus and I think of Colombo Street the way it is now, not the way it was before the earthquakes. And I ask myself, is that the right model for a central city bus now, for a hop on hop off shuttle?
That is a good point.
Yeah, it is my point, because it's just one I wondered if your board had considered it, but
we've not discussed that, and obviously the central city has a different layout than prior to earthquakes, so that is something that obviously will need to take into consideration.
I invite you to take that back and just have a bit of a preliminary discussion on it, because I'm 100% in favour of a inner city shuttle. I'm not convinced that this is the best model, and the yellow one wasn't even green by the time we had completed the project. It was a diesel bus, so they'd run out of the electrics, and things weren't working so well. But I'm really keen to pursue it, or to set up for the next council to continue to work with ECAN to get this resolved once and for all. Fully integrated public transport system would be a great thing, but there you go. Mike, and then Tim.
Thank you. Actually, you probably went where I was going to go anyhow, because that's obviously a current bus and not one that anyone would think would look like the inner city shuttle. In terms of, there's been a lot of, comments in the past that we have to wait for all the, the attractions, the destinations within the city centre be completed before it's really viable. Do you think actually we're at that stage now, there's enough done that we should be doing this right now?
I would agree with that, Mike, and thanks for that question. I think we, as a city, can always be waiting for the next thing to happen in order for the next thing to happen. And I think we just need to get on with it.
Okay. And I know we've looked at the potential of using a tram, but do you think something like a shuttle, like a bus, a smaller bus than that's actually more accessible, is probably going to be better for people that have some disability issues?
Yeah, I think, look, it's a lovely thought to use the tram, but it's not necessarily something that is easily accessible, especially for our less mobile residents. But yeah, look, I don't know. It's not something that the board has actually discussed, so just a personal opinion, perhaps something that is smaller and more accessible, that is easier to get around our now slightly harder streets to get around in the central city, would be something worth considering.
All right, thanks, Al.
Thank you. I've got Tim and then James.
Thank you. Flooding is a really interesting issue with regards to when you get feedback, because those people that are truly affected by it are basically on the terraces, really, and certain other areas. But if you're a street back or whatever, you can feel compassion, but you're not truly, you're not being flooded. And if you were lucky enough to be bought out, it's not your issue anymore, but living next to those sections, you would be worried, especially with the new science that's come out. So what is the feedback from your communities and the feeling of the community board with regards to the low stop banks?
So the low stop banks, obviously we have not been given that information, but our community has come to us and they are very concerned about it, very concerned. They're obviously dealing with flooding when we are having the heavy rain events. And I think, to be totally honest, they feel a little forgotten about, and that's really affecting their well-being. Yeah. And I think, to be totally honest, it's a bit of a bad look for council, and I think we need to address it. But I think it needs to be something that is also addressed with the community board, so we can be relaying information back to our community in a timely manner.
So would you be open to, say, combined community board briefing with regards to, with obviously Sprade and Cashmere as well, because we're in the same same boat, so to speak?
That would be really useful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. James.
Thanks. Hey, Alex. I'm interested in your view on the additional vacant site rate for the central city, and if you feel that it would be important or useful for it to be applied to derelict buildings.
Thank you for that question. Look, I would love to answer that right now, but unfortunately this is not something that the board has discussed, so I can't answer on behalf of them.
Right, well, maybe that's something that you could also take there. I mean, I know that the submissions have closed on it.
Yeah.
But it's just something to keep an eye out for.
Absolutely,
Be a future direction in that regard. So
we can absolutely do that. Thanks, Jamie.
I was interested in the stormwater issue on the Port Hills. Because, I mean, we do often focus on stormwater issues as relation to the impact on our rivers.
Yeah.
And certainly my own focus has been on that. But you've raised a really good point. So I mean, I'm just thinking that is, I mean, it's a significant impact on the properties, not necessarily where the drains are, but further down, because you're getting the water diverted from the stormwater system, from the pipes, and actually delivered directly into neighbouring properties and downhill properties.
Yeah. So I think the issue with that is obviously it's flooding people's houses, and it shouldn't be as a start. But also with the effects to land, being realistic, if you're going to have water flooding through properties, it's also affecting their gardens. You could potentially see landslips. Then that has an effect on the properties below. Yeah,
it's undermining the stability of the land.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest issue that I've taken from your submission this morning. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge issue. So
yeah, it really is.
I'd like to pick that one up because it is something that I think we need to factor into. I mean, I don't know why, but we're spending a lot of time talking about Three Waters at the moment. But this is a side of the stormwater issue that really hasn't had a lot of airtime. So thank you very much for raising it.
I mean, it does affect all the hills.
Yeah, no, I'm not. It says stormwater Port Hills. It did not differentiate between where the ward's boundaries sit. I promise you that. I promise. Okay. Right. Look, thank you very much, Alex, and it's been a really great presentation. So thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.